It's the boy, Bubba, let's coming through. Hella clutch, flawless, can't be touched. It's your boy, Bubba, let's. Yeah, I need that hot take. I need the truth and everything that is not fake.
Hello, Bubba Bunch, and welcome back to another edition of the Bubba Let's Sports Podcast. It is episode 216, and this is long overdue. Been dealing with the new job, adjusting to the new schedule, and I've been slacking, I will say that. So I apologize for that. I missed you guys, and I hope that you missed me, because we're at 95 subscribers on YouTube. I'm just ecstatic that we're getting closer and closer to that goal. But from this point forward, I think I can do this on a regular basis. I'm going to try to do as many episodes as possible. My days off are Wednesdays and Thursdays. So this is why most of these episodes that you're going to see this week are going to be on these days. But I'm going to try my best to do as many episodes as possible in those 2 days. And then if I can do it on other days when I'm working, I am definitely going to try. If it's something that we need to talk about and we're getting closer to the draft, I need to do some preparation for that. I got to watch some film. And I mean, it's got to be better out of my part, because I got to provide the content that you guys rightfully deserve. So this is an apology for you guys, and I hope that I can make it up in the future with the episodes we do on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So expect most of those episodes to come out during that time, and then an occasional maybe Monday, Friday, something like that. I'll try my best. If it's super important, we have to talk about it. And I've been wanting to talk about this topic for days now. I mean, I've been thinking about it at work, just wondering, like, how am I going to approach this? But it's pretty simple to me. I've been backing Carson Wentz for many weeks now, and months really, ever since he got benched, of like, yes, this is a bad year for Carson Wentz, and maybe he's not as good as we once thought, but I don't think this is the end of the road for Carson Wentz, and I don't think his career's over. I think he can bounce back and really prove himself again, because of the one key part that made him successful in Philadelphia in 2016, 2017, especially 2017 in that MVP-like season. It's Frank Reich. Frank Reich was the offensive coordinator from 16 to 17 for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's now the head coach and has had great success with the Indianapolis Colts. So why not make this trade? Now, the whole ordeal about this was the fact that what was Carson Wentz worth? Carson Wentz was worth not a first-rounder, not multiple first-rounders. And you can even say, like, maybe not even a second, but there's got to be a player involved, in my opinion, and then a second or third rounder. That's good enough. This back and forth and this bickering by the Philadelphia Eagles, who have no leverage when it comes to this deal. They have to get rid of Carson Wentz, even though this is going to be dead money. I mean, this is like $33 million in dead cap space, because they wanted to get rid of Carson Wentz. And if they had gotten rid of him past June 1st, it would have only been like a $9 million cap hit. But this is the problem, is that they have no leverage due to the fact that they have to get rid of a lot of their guys, not just Carson Wentz. They just recently released Alshon Jeffrey, and they're going to go with a lot of young guys at the wide receiver position. And so expect a lot more out of the Philadelphia Eagles this next coming of weeks, and especially when it comes to those big names in the defense. These guys are not going to be able to get paid. They are still $42 million over the cap limit, and especially with it going down this year, this is going to be a tough year for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they got a lot to do. I get it. Like, if you want to believe in Jalen Hurts, go right ahead. I'm not high on him, and I don't think when it comes down to 6 months down the road and it's a few weeks into the season, everyone's going to be like, oh, maybe he's not as good as we thought, Carson Wentz 2.0. But this is going to be a bad year for the Philadelphia Eagles, so they needed to get rid of Carson Wentz any way possible and get something out of him. They weren't going to get the first rounders. They weren't going to get a first rounder. And that was a harsh reality they had to come to. It happens. If they would have traded him a year ago, 2 years ago, this would have been one of the blockbuster deals of the century. But because of the bad year that he had, this hype and the value of Carson Wentz is just not there anymore. Now, you're lucky that Frank Reich wanted Carson Wentz all along. He's quoted that. He wanted Carson Wentz this entire time. And rightfully so. You found the success and you had a good chemistry in Philadelphia. I think this is the best thing for Carson Wentz. As much as I bashed on him and much as he was on the losers portion of winners losers this year, I thought that Carson Wentz still had a chance to be a good quarterback in the NFL. And if there's any place that he could have gone to make that a reality, it is the Indianapolis Colts, who made it work with Phillip Rivers. They went against a really good Buffalo Bills team in the playoffs, and they just fell short. I think going forward, I'd rather have Carson Wentz than Phillip Rivers because I feel like there's more potential and more upside to Carson Wentz. Phillip Rivers was at the end of his career. Phillip Rivers was going to be hopefully not a dramatic hero ball type of quarterback like he was in San Diego / Los Angeles. But Carson Wentz has to have at least a Mitchell Trubisky year or second half of the 2020 season. Mitchell Trubisky toward the end of the 2020 season was competent. He was good enough to be the starter of the Chicago Bears. And I think he played well. Look, we all talk about how the Chicago Bears are a really good defensive team and they have the potential to be a really good playoff team. But it's Mitchell Trubisky. Look, in that Saints game, if Wims didn't drop that dime of a ball that Mitchell Trubisky threw into the end zone, maybe that game goes differently, but I still think that the Saints would have won, but maybe it's closer than people would have anticipated. I think that we don't give enough credit to Mitchell Trubisky for how he played toward the end of the year. So if I'm Carson Wentz, I'm saying if that's the standard to be a starting quarterback in this league, well, I can do that. I know I'm more talented than that, but now everybody's doubting me. Now everybody is off on me, and they're moving on to the next guy. They're moving on to Trevor Lawrence, or in this case, Jalen Hurts. You've already moved on no matter what fan base you are. You've already forgotten about Carson Wentz. And if the Colts have success, they're probably not going to put it on Carson Wentz. If they fail, they're going to put it on Carson Wentz. You really have nothing to lose at this point. You were given a second chance, and you have all the fuel to really show that no one's going to believe in me anymore. So I just got to do this for myself. And I got to do it for Frank Reich, who has always believed in me. We look at the stats from 2017 where he had 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He had that bad injury, but the man can play the game of football. The injuries have trailed him over the last few years. And, of course, last year with all the turnovers, all the bad decisions, he was sacked the most in the NFL. How can you really judge that Carson Wentz has done in this league based on the fact that his offensive line could not protect him at all? Look, I'll give you the benefit of those turnovers. Those were pretty bad decisions made by Carson Wentz, or the lack thereof of awareness. But come on, man. Like, our standard of quarterbacks in the NFL is either Hall of Fame or they are garbage. Like, there are a few in between that are just okay. So if we can get Nathan Peterman re-signed to a team in the NFL and to be a backup, Carson Wentz is always going to be able to have a job in this league. Is it a starting job? Maybe not. But this is his chance. This is a very good opportunity because you go from a complete opposite situation of a bad offensive line, no weapons on the outside, and a defense that really couldn't do much in the secondary, to a team that is better coached, better overall as far as talent goes, and is reliable and consistent in how they play. Their defense is going to be even better next year. Their offensive weapons. Jonathan Taylor is going to be a top 5 running back in this league, guaranteed next year because of how hard he played this year. Then you got the surgence of Michael Pittman Jr., who's not going to give the number to Carson Wentz. I'm sorry about that, buddy, but 11's not the number. Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be really good next year. Let's see what they do with T.Y. Hilton. He's probably going to hit free agency and look at the market. But I still think they have some really good weapons in Indianapolis and one of the best offensive lines in football. Like, Anthony Costanzo does retire. I get that. That's a huge loss for them. But Quentin Nelson is a beast. He's a great offensive lineman, and they are going to make it work because overall they are phenomenal. And as long as you have a great offensive line, you can make it in this league. Carson Wentz can make it in this league. Now, what the Philadelphia Eagles get, a third rounder and a conditional second rounder that could be potentially a first rounder, depending on how many snaps and how long Carson Wentz plays this season. In 2022, they can potentially have a first rounder. I think that's the best case scenario for the Eagles, considering that this has to be a bounce back year. And maybe that's not the right term, but just a step back as far as lowering the expectations for the Eagles this year and really just having a reality check of what they actually have in this organization, because I don't think Jalen Hurts is the guy. I don't think they have a really solid running game. I think their best wide receiver, if you were to ask me who's going to be the best wide receiver for the Eagles after this year, it's going to be John Henderson, who is going to take over for Deshaun Watson, who was released as well. And he's going to now take over for that spot as far as the deep threat, who's really fast, really good with his hands. And in his second year, I think he does progress way better than Jalen Reagor does. So Henderson's going to be the best wide receiver in my opinion. Dallas Goedert's going to be their second best option. And then let's see what they do with Zach Ertz, who's most likely going to leave Philadelphia. Their offensive line, Lane Johnson, Jason Peters dealt with a whole lot of injuries. That whole offensive line was banged up. But Lane Johnson and Jason Peters are getting up there in age. And retirement is weighing heavy on their minds. So this is not a young group of guys offensively. And especially how we saw the success of offensive lines this year. Tampa Bay, we saw it in even Washington. They succeeded very well on offense because of their offensive line. The Rams, of course, they are just critical to the success of not just the quarterback, but the entire team to set the pace, time of possession, and allow something to happen as far as playing ability and drives. The Eagles don't have that. So if you want to look at this and just be the typical like, oh, well, it's a bad trade no matter what because you're getting Carson Wentz on one side who's garbage, and then you don't get many picks out of the other side because you didn't get a first rounder. The Eagles are going to be fine in like 5 years. I think they have the ability to grow. Doug Peterson, the way he ended this past season, it ultimately costed him his job. I think Doug Peterson's a great head coach. I think he's a great leader. So when he takes this year off and then comes back next year, I think he's going to be a great addition to whatever team he goes to. I don't know how I feel about Nick Sirianni. I don't know if he's the guy for them. But in 5 years, it's the NFC East. You're going to make it competitive no matter what. And especially how the other teams are going. Yeah, you're behind them, but it doesn't take much to see that the NFC East is not going to be the elite of the elite in the NFL. So I think they're going to be fine. It's just going to be a next few bad years for the Eagles. For the Colts, other than Carson Wentz, I don't think there's really many other options for them. Of course, you have the big names in Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, but it's very unlikely that they would give up that much for those two guys. And based on what I'm reading about Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Dak's probably not going to leave Dallas due to the franchise tag or whether they get the deal done or not. We'll save that for tomorrow. I'm going to do the episode where we talk about what they need to do in the offseason, so keep that in mind. Deshaun Watson has a lot of better options, in my opinion, that would work better for him and probably get him more money in the long term than Indianapolis. It would be New York with the Jets, San Francisco, or Denver. I think those are really good landing spots for Deshaun Watson, who we just don't really know at this point. But yeah, the Colts, I think Carson Wentz was the best decision, especially with that connection of Frank Reich. Based on my takes of Carson Wentz and what I believe in him, I think he's going to outplay Jalen Hurts this year. And I stand by that statement 100%. Based on stats, based on the success of their teams, Carson Wentz is going to have a better year than Jalen Hurts. I'm saying that hands down. Look, we got to look at this trend of Alabama quarterbacks. And it's not just Jalen Hurts, who also went to Oklahoma, but he started at Alabama. I've just seen a bad rep of bad or great quarterbacks in college who fill up the stat sheet and make plays all around, and they win national championships, and they come into this league and think that it's going to be peaches, right? The earliest I can remember is A.J. McCarron. Then you go into Jalen Hurts. You can go into Tua Tagovailoa. There are multiple names coming out of Alabama that just don't work in the NFL. Is it the fact that they don't have the same weapons and the same 5-star, 4-star recruits that they did in Alabama, or the same coaching staff that they would have in Alabama with Nick Saban, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin? These are highly touted coordinators, coaches that want to win at Alabama to earn themselves another job as a head coach somewhere else and get the big bucks. That's just how it works. At Alabama, you have every weapon possible, and you have every gift, every single thing given to you because of how good you played earlier in your life. So you're giving everything that you possibly can be given to win a national championship. You don't have that same luxury in the NFL. I'm looking at Jalen Hurts. I'm like, look, he's a talented dude, but I don't think he's a franchise guy. I think once we get film on him and we start to realize that once you put a game plan around him, he's not going to be the same level of Deshaun Watson or of Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson. Like, even those guys struggle at times. So what makes you think that Jalen Hurts, who is really good on his feet, has a pretty good arm, he has tangibles that you would want in a quarterback, but I don't think it's enough to carry this Eagles team to victory. He's going to have some really good moments, some really good highlights, and I get that. I'm fine with that. That's going to be nice to see. But this idea that Jalen Hurts is going to just take over the league is just ridiculous, and I don't like that. I think he's a good player, and he's going to be fun to watch next year, but let's just slow it down, man. Let's slow it down on Jalen Hurts and just think that he's going to be good, not great. I think that's above average at best for Jalen Hurts. Basically, what you saw at Oklahoma is what's going to happen in Philly. He's going to put up stats. He's going to make the plays and put the team on his back. But at the end of the day, they're going to get bounced in the first round of the playoff or playoffs. Just how it is. Because I don't think he's good enough to make that jump, make that elite jump that a lot of these other guys around the league have been able to do because they have better situations and they're just more talented than Jalen Hurts. That's just my opinion. So at the end of the day, Carson Wentz is going to be better than Jalen Hurts after this season. Take that to the bank. Anything else, people? Anything else about the Carson Wentz deal that I haven't talked about? Don't think so. Any other thing that we can talk about? I mean, there is the reports that both sides of Big Ben and the Steelers want to continue in 2021. That is the worst thing that could possibly happen in Pittsburgh. And if you're a Steelers fan, if you actually do want Big Ben to be your quarterback in 2021, God help you and Godspeed at this point, because it's done. It's over for Big Ben in his career. He had a really good run. He brought a different element to that position as far as being durable and just being big and wide and taking hits. He's just a different type of breed that was unlike any other in his era. It is 2021. He doesn't have the same durability. He's banged up. He doesn't have the same strength. He doesn't have the same arm as he did in previous years. And when we think about Pittsburgh and what's best for them in the future, the possibility of signing J.J. Watt alongside his brother, an already great defense that can create a lot of turnovers, an offense that has a lot of potential to be a young group that is electric on the field. Whether that includes JJ or Juju Smith-Schuster is up to them. But Chase Claypool, Eric Ebron's still a really good tight end. Deontay Johnson, these guys are really good. And their offensive line, although old, can still get it done in most cases. They have to figure out the running back situation. So if I'm really looking around like college or in free agency, there's some pretty good options coming out of college that could really work for the Pittsburgh Steelers. ETN and I mean, like, I have to really look at the running backs this year, but ETN really stands out to me because I think he can be a late first rounder or early second rounder based on how the first 10 to 20 picks are going to work out this draft. But there's potential to move on from James Conner, maybe get something out of him, and go with a young buck at running back because we saw the success that could be in the running back position based on last year. That draft last year was really good. They're going to be even better this year. But we've always just discussed this on this podcast about how the running backs are so replaceable and you don't need the big name. Like James Conner 2 years ago was almost an elite running back based on his size and his patience, much like Le'Veon Bell. Now, they were the worst running team in the league last year. And if James Conner just magically comes together and bounces back, that'll shock me. I'll be super surprised if that ends up happening. But I think what's best for the Pittsburgh Steelers is to move on from Big Ben because they need a young buck. They need a future at that position that they can look into 5 years and say, we don't have to worry about that guy. And I think Sam Darnold is a really good option for them because Dwayne Haskins ain't the one. But Sam Darnold is just speaking to me as the first name or the first place that could really work for him outside of New York. And Sam Darnold, it's weird because there's been reports that like the QB carousel and just all the talks about where everybody's going, it's kind of dimmed down. It's kind of been slow when it comes to the news, especially last week during the winter storms. Like it just felt like nothing was going on, and the Carson Wentz deal was just out of nowhere. So after that, I'm kind of looking at these other quarterbacks like Marcus Mariota, Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson, of course, and I'm like, we haven't heard much. I feel like there should be more to be said about these quarterbacks and where they're going at this point of the offseason. So we just have to stay tuned and see that. The Carson Wentz deal is going to be talked about for another few days, maybe a few weeks, before something else comes along like Dak Prescott. Russell Wilson is most executives and owners around the league, personnel, would say that the value of Russell Wilson, if he were to get traded, is 3 first-round draft picks. I'm not going to disagree with that. Look, it's Russell Wilson, and I'm kind of seeing that a lot of people are off the bandwagon of Russell Wilson being an elite quarterback. And I'm going to tell you right now that I want to slap you in the face because you try being the backbone of this organization that is giving you nothing on your offensive line to say, we want to protect you for the future. He's had tremendous luck with wide receivers throughout the years. I mean, DK was a freak physically, but no one really expected him to be at this level already in his first 2 years in the league. And then you look at some of the other guys like Tyler Lockett, even some of their tight ends that really just wouldn't be number one guys anywhere else, like Hollister and Greg Olsen, who went there this past season, up there in age, and he retires. But they've been very lucky with these players that don't really stand out in free agency, or you wouldn't expect to be number one guys elsewhere, but they just work in Seattle. And you can say that about the running backs as well. I mean, DJ Dallas was really good when Chris Carson was out for much of this year. They used Carlos Hyde a few times this year. Rashad Penny. Like, they've been very lucky with their running game, and they just found a gold mine with Chris Carson if he can stay healthy. But the one thing they haven't been able to do is protect Russell Wilson on that offensive line. They've been better these past few years, but that bar was set very low since their Super Bowl years. And ever since then, haven't we just seen the same old Seattle Seahawks team every year? Great offensive stats. I mean, they are just fun to watch, and they are ecstatic. They are just amazing to watch, including Russell Wilson. But much of that success is because of Russell Wilson running around, rolling out, and just making a play. This year, their first 4 weeks of the season, dear God, was some of the best quarterback play I've ever seen in my lifetime. And then after that, you start to see that defense just could not stop anybody. So how do you expect to blow out anybody or stay in games when you're giving up 40, 35 at least, with no secondary that include Jamal Adams, And then they finally figured out the defense. Like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll be fine. They put up really good numbers. They win a lot of games. Does this sound familiar to you over the last 6 years in Seattle? They win a lot of games. They put up the stats. Whoop did he do? They get to the playoffs, and then you're like, all right, well, that was fun. Because at the end of the day, what matters is the offensive line. It's the defensive line. It's winning those battles up front. And the Seahawks never are able to do that. And they are just so oblivious to the fact that they need to change that, and they haven't done anything about it. So this frustration by Russell Wilson is valid. And I could name a lot of those plays where Russell Wilson makes a bad decision. And I will say 100%, back it up, that those plays are only happening because he feels like he has to play hero ball. He has to make a play down the field. Otherwise, this is going to be a long day for him where he's not going to get any protection. He is forced to do many things for this offense that should not be expected of him. He is a tremendous thrower down the field. He is so accurate. He's a great decision maker, and he's a damn good leader. And I've seen some people say, I'll take Dak Prescott over Russell Wilson, and I am like, what in the fuck is happening? That is ridiculous. I love both of them, but Russell Wilson is just on a different level than Dak Prescott. He's a better decision maker, better thrower down the field, even though Dak's improving on that. And he's better with his legs, better with his feet. Russell Wilson's just better. He's a better version of Dak Prescott. So if we're looking at Matthew Stafford, who was worth multiple first-round draft picks, if we want a Stafford deal for a 11, 12-year quarterback who's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, who's been with a bad organization in his career, never had the same level of talent and potential to win games like he does in Los Angeles, and getting up there in age as well, why is that worth 2 first-round draft picks? But it's absurd to say that Russell Wilson's worth 3. If I'm an organization that desperately needs a quarterback, I am giving up 3 first-round draft picks over the next 3 years instead of risking it and going with a Mac Jones, going with a Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. If it's not Trevor Lawrence, I'm out of it. And I don't think we'll see a talent like Trevor Lawrence or in previous years like Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow in a very long time. Trevor Lawrence was worth the hype from the very beginning, and it was about damn time that he left Clemson to finally get into the NFL. There's not going to be a guy that you can guarantee will be a starting franchise quarterback. Day one will be amazing and will put up the numbers, will make a difference for your team like Trevor Lawrence will be. It's not going to happen. So why take that risk over the next 3 years and wait for a guy like that when you have definitely a Russell Wilson, Super Bowl winner, franchise guy that can give you just a different level of success wherever he goes? I mean, he's a game changer. Why do you want to risk taking 2 quarterbacks over the next 3 years like some of these other teams have done in the past when you can guarantee a great quarterback in Russell Wilson, who still has a lot more years to give to this league and plenty of elite play at that position? Why not go to New York with the Jets? Robert Saleh, defensive-minded coach. Not bad as far as the talent. It could be better, but it could be worse. We look at that Jets roster and we say, like, we don't know many of these guys. But I'm saying, man, they played hard in those 2 wins last year. And maybe I'm just looking more into it than I should. But I think there's something with the Jets that could change this season to where many people are like, you know what? There's something there. There's something there that Robert Saleh can do with this team. And just remember, good old buddy boy Bubba Lutz was the first one to tell you that. Russell Wilson, I've given everything to this organization in Seattle. I've been given nothing in return. So why should I stay? Why should I continue to be frustrated when I know that I can get more money elsewhere, where I can be loved more elsewhere, and I feel safer and I feel better about myself? Seattle's not a huge market when it comes to the NFL. You can go to New York, you can go to Chicago, you can go to Pittsburgh or Denver, and you can win. I mean, you can win plenty of football games there, much like you have in Seattle, but there is much more to give in those cities outside of Seattle, because we know we've seen the ceiling for Seattle. The Seattle ceiling of they're a good regular season team. They are the Houston Rockets of the NFL. They choke in the playoffs. Plain and simple, James Harden needs to leave. Russell Wilson needs to leave Seattle, much like James Harden needed to leave Houston, to finally get over the hump. If Brooklyn wins the title this year with James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, it is a sign from the heavens that Russell Wilson needs to leave Seattle, because the comparisons are just apples to apples. It is a carbon copy of what's going on in Houston. Is that what's best for both sides, even though you may not like it if you're Seattle, is to let go of Russell Wilson. You have to, because this idea of, like, you need the harsh reality that, like, you can't just put anybody in that position at quarterback and he's going to be 13-3, or he's going to go 13-3. Pete Carroll's been lucky that Russell Wilson has carried this football team, because without Russell Wilson, who is the most valuable player in the NFL, he may not win the award, but he's the most valuable player in the NFL. Without him, they are nothing. They are absolutely nothing. So, Russell Wilson, get out of there. Pete Carroll, I'm sorry, buddy, but you got to let him go. If you love someone, let them go. Plain and simple. People, I think this is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. If I missed anything, let me know. Text me, tweet me of something you would like for me to talk about, because my head is spinning right now. But I appreciate you listening to this podcast. I promise you there will be more to come this week. Plenty of more over the next coming weeks. And I promise I will get on that NFL draft film sesh. I will be John Gruden in the QB camp as soon as possible. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been episode 216. Make sure to subscribe, follow, share it, and we will see you next time on the Bubble Sports Podcast.
Yeah, hold on. Tell me who's your top 5 quarterbacks right now, dead or alive, huh? And how much do you care about a ring if the best player got carried by the team? Now, would you lose if it been a better draft pick? And do you cuss when your team get their ass?